Good evening. Welcome to the Who's Left podcast, a show about Indiana politics, history, and culture from an unapologetically leftist perspective. My name is Scott Aaron Rogers, and I'm broadcasting from Bloomington. With less than a week to go before Indiana's May 5th primary election, we bring you this special bonus episode. And if you have not already voted early, please have a plan to vote between now and Election Day. Tuesday night, I'll be anchoring Progressive Indiana Network's election coverage along with Brianna Newhart, Carly Dunn, Derek Holder, and Kelly DeLong. We'll watch the returns roll in, provide analysis for all the key races, and hopefully speak with several of the candidates throughout the night. But before we get to the big day, a couple of 9th District congressional candidates will have an opportunity to make a last-minute pitch right here. Sunday night, I'm hosting Dr. Tim Peck for a virtual town hall at 7 p.m., where he will take your questions right in the live chat on Facebook Live, YouTube, and, of course, at progressiveindiana.net. But tonight, one of his opponents in this race joins me. Keil Roark sat down with us for his own town hall back in February, where he fielded viewer questions, but tonight it's just the two of us. The former UAW assembly line worker, Navy Reserve officer, and Purdue engineering graduate is running as an explicitly moderate candidate in the mold of Joe Manchin or John Fetterman, arguing only he can sway enough Republicans to actually win this district. Now, we might have differing viewpoints on things, but we'll hear him out and talk about his top policy priorities, including affordability, infrastructure, government reform, and education. But before we get there, you know the routine. This is an independent media project. We don't paywall content. We certainly don't have any billionaire benefactors. Only individuals like you keep this thing going. It is a foundational principle of Who's Left and the Progressive Indiana Network that we refuse to hide important information behind paywalls in the middle of a political crisis, even if that's not in our financial best interest. So please, if you find value in this work, and it is a lot of work, go to progressiveindiana.net and subscribe at the paid level. It's only $5 a month or $50 for the whole year to help us build the infrastructure that will pop the right-wing media bubble in this state. And while a paid subscription is the best way to help us grow and sustain this project, you can help in other ways by liking and sharing on social media, commenting, leaving reviews, providing feedback, forwarding our content to your people. You get us when you can. Mostly, we just want you here in this community of Hoosiers dedicated to making this state and its government work for all of us, not just the elite few. Please join us. You can follow me on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads at whosleft.us and on Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube at Who's Left. Progressive Indiana Network's handle is the full spelled out name on most sites, but on Blue Sky and TikTok, it is PIN Indiana. Please help us grow with a follow wherever you're at. Tell the others. Let's build a radically democratic Indiana together. Now, enough of me yapping. Let's welcome our guest, Keil Roark. Keil, welcome, sir.
Hi, Scott. Good evening. How are you? Thank you for taking some time this evening to talk about the issues critical to our colleagues here in the 9th Congressional District. Thank you very much for your time this evening.
I am glad to have you. You know, we got to do a little town hall back in February, and that's nice. I like to be a conduit for the people and sort of, introduce their questions to you. But, you and I didn't really get a chance to chat, as it were. So, I like to begin all of these little one-on-ones the same way with our candidate interviews and sort of do the easy W's of journalism, the who, what, when, where, why, right? Obviously, the what is the election. We're in it right now. Election day is Tuesday. That's your when. Now, let's talk about you. Let's talk about the who. Tell us about Keil Roark.
Yeah, so I'm a former UAW assembly line worker, Navy officer. So I was basically a UAW assembly line worker for 8+ years, a Navy officer for 11, 3 years on active duty, 8 years on reserve duty. I've held many roles in my career. I'm an electrical engineer by trade, worked at Chrysler, Ford, Cummins, and then now Rolls-Royce, and project management roles, engineering roles. I was a production supervisor for a long time and a test supervisor. So a lot of varied experiences, managing different folks in different areas, a lot of technical work. But that's kind of my background. I've also done some teaching as well at the Ivy Tech, ITT in Sullivan. I enjoy teaching, helping folks learn different trades so they can get out and get a good paying job. And, of course, I'm a dad. I have 4 children, and I go to church, of course, and deeply worried about this country. And I decided to throw my name in a hat because I wanted to make a difference. I mean, I'm here to make a difference, help the people of the CD9. And it's that simple. I'm not here to build my resume. I'm not here to gloat, nothing. Just I want to help our people because I see how much stress, financial stress there is out there in our community. And I'm here to help, and I'm here to serve to the best of my ability and make things easier for our folks here in the 9th Congressional District.
Yeah, let's talk about the 9th a little bit. I get to the where. This is my district. I'm up here in Bloomington, kind of at the fringes of the 9th, which is a very, very large district. We talked about this a little bit before we went live. Every time I find myself going out there into the 9th, and, like I said, it's huge. I learn a little bit more about it every time as someone who's been traveling all over the place, meeting people during this campaign. What's something maybe you didn't know about the 9th beforehand, a hidden treasure, a nook or cranny that the folks maybe don't know about?
A milk or cranny or something that folks don't know about. That's a tricky one. I mean, obviously you have Bloomington, which is a very, kind of urban, suburban area. Of course, it's growing in populator. Go Hoosiers. We won the NCAA championship this year. That was just unbelievable.
I still can't believe it.
I still can't either. I mean, year after year, it's like, oh my gosh, they're getting beat again. When are they going to change? And they did it. It's good. It's hard to believe. But anyway, I digress. So it's a very interesting part. I mean, a lot of the urban areas are kind of sprawled out, right? You got basically Bloomington, the northwest corner of the district, and then you got basically Clark County, close to Louisville, and then you got Dearborn County, the metro area of Cincy. There's a kinds of the higher populated areas. And then in between that is you got the rural parts of the district, right? Scott County, where the farm country is, right? Those rural areas. And it's just a world of difference, right? But the culture or the pace and how things work, in terms of education, attitudes, culture, world of difference between, Jackson County, Jennings County, Scott County, and then you go into Monroe County. You see these big differences across just a small half-hour drive, right? So I guess what I would say to answer your question, I would say, I guess the beauty of the district is the differences in the cultures, but the theme of unity, Hoosier unity, when it comes down to it, that between the rural folks and the urban folks, and we all came together for the IU football team winning the national. That was just awesome. I mean, I don't care if you're in Switzerland or Jefferson or Jackson or Jennings, everybody was just pumped up. So everybody came together for that game. Doesn't matter if you're, yeah.
Yeah, it really does go to show you that anything can happen. I don't think anybody had that on their radar, even 2 years ago. But we'll get to it, I'm sure, as we discuss our topics tonight. But for all those differences you mentioned in the different corners of the district, Bloomington, and Kentuckiana down there by Louisville, and all those vast rural areas in between, I bet a lot of folks, no matter what their background is, a lot of their concerns are the same. And I think we'll get a chance to speak to some of that. But first, I guess the last and most interesting of the W questions is the why. And you mentioned somewhat to make a difference is one of the reasons that you gave for why you decided to jump into this race. Can you expound upon that some more?
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, you can kind of tell when somebody runs for public office. Is their heart in it or not? And I have experience to demonstrate that my heart's in it, right? Even before I joined the Navy, I was in the Navy for 11 years. Even before I did that, I did volunteer work. Growing up, I used to work at churches, helping build roofs. Just I had a sense of community service, I guess. And growing up, I had that, and then that just kind of carried on with me, even in adult life. I worked at the ESGR, which is Employer Support for the Guard and Reserve. Prior to 2009, we had a lot of demobes from Camp Atterbury. I used to go up there and serve and just help out the troops. I wasn't a part of the service at that time. And I just felt an obligation to kind of support the cause. And then while I was there, I served there for from 2007 to 2010. I met a retired general, and he was kind of running the organization. And he asked me, I told him, I was like, well, I'd kind of be interested in serving in the military. He's like, oh, really? Yeah, I think it'd be great. Let me know. I'll sign, I'll give you a letter of recommendation. So I got the recommendation. Then I joined up with the Navy as a Navy Reserve officer. But I guess to answer your question, I think service is in your human nature. It's certainly in mine. And it's just been that way for some time. And I guess really I want to continue that service part, especially when I look around and I see issues occurring, at the government level, at the federal government level. We need to fix our problems. I mean, I am deeply worried if it's corruption or it's debt. Our folks in our communities are struggling to pay their bills. They're working 2-3 jobs. Healthcare costs are up. Minimum wage is at $7.25. I mean, when you get into these type of candidacy positions, you get to learn all the details about what's actually happening. And to think that we have $7.25 minimum wage in 2026 is just mind-boggling. But that's the actual law. That's what it is. And it's really just shocking. And another thing that's shocking too, after you pay $180,000 in gross income, you don't have to pay any more FICA tax. You don't have to pay any more Social Security. That's astounding. So if I make $1 million a year, right, $820,000 is tax free from a FICA perspective. I don't have to pay any more Social Security. Those type of details are just disturbing because they really should be progressive, right? The more you make, you should pay a little bit more in. And they're not. And so you really get into the details on the tax code and how those folks who are doing very well are doing very well for a reason, because the tax code is doing them a lot of favors. But I hope I answered your question. But, I really think I want to continue my Navy Reserve service. Got out in 2021, and I feel obligated, and I want to leave, God forbid, at some point, I'm going to pass. I want to leave this world in a better place for my children and my grandchildren. Right.
Yeah.
I want to make them have opportunities that I had. I want them to have good paying union jobs. I want them to have good paying union, whether it's union or non-union. I want them to have good paying union jobs so they can take care of their family. They can feed their family. They can go on vacation. They can pay 401k. They can pay tuition for their children to have a better life. That's really what I'm after. When I came up in the 90s, I had a union job, but it was a good paying union job. It was tough. It was a rough job. I was like a borderline Arnold Schwarzenegger type guy. I used to go to the gym all the time. So they used to take advantage of me. I'd go in and they'd say, Roark, go over here. We want you on the hardest job in the plant because we can't keep anybody on that position because everybody goes on that job gets hurt. So we throw you young guys on the job because you never get hurt. There's tons of energy. So they used to do that to me, but at the end of the day, I'd really made good wages. I mean, I was making, this is 1991. I was making $14 an hour in 1991. And you think back, you're like, whoa, that was a lot of money back then. And then of course we had time and a half. I used all those earnings to put myself through college. And then once I got my degree, and then I moved into management, and I got my first engineering job, and I got a supervisory job, and kind of moved on from there. But without those good paying union jobs, or good paying jobs in general, I don't know. It would have been so much harder to get through everything, because everything's expensive. At that time, you had to pay your tuition. You have to pay books, room and board. You got to pay all these different fees to get through school. And things are expensive. And my family wasn't rich. I came from a middle class background. My dad was a security guard at Chrysler. He was an ex-police officer as well. My mother was a meat cutter, and they didn't have the money to pay full tuition. They just didn't have it. But my dad did help offer an opportunity to get a job, a good paying union job. So that's what allowed me to have that springboard to get that upward mobility. And so that's what I want upward mobility for folks who start out at the lower economic levels. And I want to give them an opportunity to kind of springboard up if they so choose to do that.
A lot there. And, I think one of the things you said is that, you want to leave the world a better place for your kids and your grandkids. And I think that's something that just about anybody that you're going to talk to is going to agree on. We're going to disagree maybe on how we get there. Sure. But I think we can all agree on that. Now, so I guess I want to dig into some of our, policy prescriptions here a little bit. And on your website, you mentioned your top issue, your top three issues actually are affordability. And obviously you've got more policy ideas than or more issues that you want to tackle than just that. And we'll hopefully get into some of those. But I think just let's start on affordability, because that does seem to be the primary driver of a lot of folks' votes right now. What just about everybody's concerned about. Obviously, you've got $5 a gallon gas now at this point. The energy costs percolate through the entire economy, so that's going to be a big drag on everything. But I think besides that, just zooming out, we do have larger fundamental structural issues in our economy that are at the root of our affordability crisis. And as a union guy, someone who was steeped in that, I think you can appreciate that the boss, that capital, is always going to take shortcuts, exploit labor. You kind of mentioned, hey, we're gonna use this young guy however we can, right? They're gonna seek to maximize their profit above all other things. And really, I think at the end of the day, our affordability crisis comes down to the concentration of capital economic power.
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at the last 50 years of data, you'll see a trend line going downward in the number of union households. So from like 1976, for example, at that particular time, I can't remember exactly the number, but you had probably 60% of the households were union represented or something like that. But you've seen a trend line down the last 50 years down to 2026, right? To maybe 20%, whatever that number is. But you've seen a steep trend line down. And it got accelerated with WTO, and it got accelerated with NAFTA. No bombs about it. Those were horrendous federal legislative policies that just really took an axe to union labor. And it really accelerated outsourcing. So it accelerated outsourcing. Hey, let's move everything offshore, whether it's Mexico, China, and we've been dealing with it ever since. So we've got to get back to resourcing. We have to get back to bringing more manufacturing back in this country. And the CHIPS Act was a start. Back in 2022, Biden and the Congress actually did something right. They actually passed a bipartisan legislation called the CHIPS Act. And that's basically requiring semiconductor fabrication manufacturing units in Ohio and Arizona get built, and they get subsidized because they realize 90% of the global supply, semiconductor supply, is in Taiwan.
Mm-hmm.
if China invades Taiwan, what are we going to do with chips? Right? We need semiconductors are almost everything we make, almost. I mean, but it would really cause a collapse in our economy if all of a sudden we said, hey, no more chips from Taiwan, TSMC.
And even if it wasn't just, in Taiwan, I think it's bad in general to have supply chain choke points like that where all of one critical component, it comes from one place. I think you need redundancy built in to these things. We saw it with COVID, right? Obviously, but listen, I'm a leftist. My critique of capitalism is that capitalism is always going to demand efficiency. Capitalism hates redundancy because it's inefficient. Well, sometimes what is efficient isn't necessarily what's best for the economy at large and for people, certainly.
Yeah. And another issue, I mean, just speaking on that, we have precious metal. We have a critical, China has like over pretty much a monopoly on precious metals, critical minerals. And that is causing another supply choke point with providing critical minerals for like jet engines, precious metals, manufacturing equipment. If we can't make jet engines, we're in trouble because jet engines are used on all our aerospace products, right? Or even in civilian, whether it's Boeing or, any defense application. We need precious metals. And if China is basically in pretty much a monopoly, I think they have like 90% of all the supply, we need research and development very quickly to look at alternative metals to maybe supply those critical functions to those manufacturers. And I don't know that we're supplying enough federal dollars to support those research activities for those alternative metals that basically do the same function as those, like titanium and some of the other precious metals that China supplies. But that is a major problem that we need to deal with quickly because that impacts our economy, and it will for some time until we come up with alternatives to that.
Yeah, so we're talking about sort of the input side of the market and the supply chain. Let's talk about labor a little bit. I think you mentioned at the top the minimum wage is stuck at $7.25. It's been there since 2009. It's a travesty. Certainly, we need to raise that so folks can live. It's about time the working class had a raise. I want to say if wages had kept up with productivity since minimum wage reached its peak spending power in the late 1960s, minimum wage would be something like $25 an hour right now. Now, there's some candidates out here who are suggesting that that's where we should be. I've heard 22, I've heard 28, I've heard 17, I've heard 15. Where are you on this? Where should the minimum wage be? What can we actually get, and how do we get it there?
Yeah. I mean, in a perfect world, I'd be shooting for $18 to $20 an hour because I think that's where it is. But I don't think we could get there because of the political realities. I think we'd ultimately end out at 15. And the reason I say that is because Virginia just passed a $15 an hour bill, minimum wage bill. And I think that's probably closer to where I think we could actually be. But to your point, we really need to be at about $18 or $20 an hour. I mean, to keep up with inflation, because if you extract the $7.25 out for cost of living, you're probably at about $25 an hour. If you do the numbers, this is just plain math.
I want to say here in Indiana right now, a living wage, what it would cost for somebody to rent an apartment and have enough to get by, you need at least like $22 an hour to get by. And so, I guess just from a you talk about what you think we can get and what we should get isn't the right strategy there, the right tactic be to like ask for the moon, you aim high, be like, you know what, it should be 30. And then if you can, if you get to the 18 or 20, great, right? Like,
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's just, no, I totally agree with you. Yeah. I mean, in a perfect world, you take the 725, you'd extrapolate it out. It's just basic math, right? Actuary science. You get $25 an hour and you're like, oh, boom, based off actuary science, we should be at $25 an hour. And you start there. And then as a legislator, sometimes you got to negotiate. You got to work the problem. Rarely do you sing Kumbaya. You get 400 some members together to say, all right, we're going to do $25 an hour. The only time that happened was what? The Epstein file, the Epstein transparency.
And even then, only when there was no other option on the table, right?
And that's when they said, oh, I better sign up for this or I'll be in real trouble. Yeah, you better. But yeah, I agree with you. You need to start. I'm a numbers guy. So the reality is it should be at 25 an hour, but do I think politically we could get there? Probably not. We're probably more likely going to get 15 to 18 an hour if we could even get there. I mean, I guarantee my Democratic colleagues have tried to get a minimum wage bill on the floor. And obviously with Republicans controlling both House and Senate, it's almost impossible, right? They don't even want to talk about it. So, yeah, I mean, you could say the same thing about congressional pay. Congress hasn't got a pay since, I think, 2009. And I know nobody wants to talk about it, but they haven't had a pay raise either. So
at least their base salary, they're doing fine with the insider trading generally.
Oh, I didn't want you brought that up. I thought you were going to bring that up later. Roll that up now. Yes, I am a proponent of a Transparency Act, no stock trade act. So I'm definitely for that. Some say it's a swamp, but it's really a sewer there, and it's unfortunate. It's terrible. I mean, once you become a congressional rep, you should put your stocks and bonds in your portfolios away in a hidden account, and you don't have access to trade while you're in that office. That's the way it should be, but it's not the way it is right now.
Yeah. So I want to stick on the affordability thread, when we're talking about the minimum wage and how you can't afford to live on that. And obviously gas is $5 a gallon right now. And you've got consolidated corporate power, so they can basically set prices wherever they want. There's not a whole heck of a lot of competition. One of the other primary drivers of the affordability crisis is our out of control healthcare spending. And, for the United States, our outcomes are not as great as some other countries, and our costs are way higher than anywhere else in the industrialized world. And I've seen the studies. They say that single payer Medicare for all is going to be the most cost-effective way to organize a healthcare system. And we've talked about this here on the debate the other day, I think at our town hall previously, and I don't think you said you supported single payer Medicare for all. Now, is that one of these situations where it's like, well, I'd like to get that, but I don't think we can get that? Or is it, I just don't think that's the way we should set up our healthcare system?
Well, I mean, I think about what we have versus what we want. So we currently have access to ACA, but unfortunately the ACA the price points are out of reach. So the subsidies weren't extended. And then of course, everybody is experiencing on average a 25% premium hike. And that should be reinstated. So I'm definitely for that because that's something realistically we could do. Actually, when I'm sworn in January, I'll be one of the first ones up there to say, hey, let's go ahead and reinstate ACA subsidies and get this done quickly. And I think that can happen very quickly, right? Relative to Medicare for all, I looked at Japan's program and their proposal, and they have kind of single payer Medicare for all type program. universal healthcare. But one of the key things they had, and obviously it's a very different culture in so many different ways. But one of the things that caught my interest is the fact they pay less for healthcare per person, and they have better outcomes, higher quality outcomes. They live longer. I think their average age is 85 or 84, I believe, life expectancy. But one of the key drivers of their outcomes is prevention.
Mm-hmm.
Prevention in their program, which I thought was interesting. So what I would propose is updating ACA to include a preventive component. And what I mean by preventive, meaning every year, if you go to the doctor and you get your blood work done, if you get a dental exam, if you do any kind of exercise, eat healthy, all these different markers for general health and well-being, you get a healthcare deduction, tax deduction. Maybe it's $500 a year or $1,000 a year off your premium. And so that's what they do in some of these other countries like Japan. They provide a third premium reduction on their premium because all the different yearly examinations they go through, because they've shown over time, if you get preventive work done, you have your healthcare cost over long term is a lot lower. So that's what I would propose with the ACA is some kind of mechanism where we can encourage folks to do preventive medical exams and follow-ups to encourage folks to get ahead of illnesses. That's really what you're doing. You're getting ahead of. You're trying to catch issues before they become a major problem, which costs a lot more money, of course. So that's one thing I would propose. Yeah. So that's one thing I propose. Medicare for all, I'm not there yet. I've heard a lot of good things about it in terms of, but there's a lot of open questions. I mean, I question how are we going to pay for it. I question, long wait times, doctor accessibility, because as you know, and maybe you don't know, there's a doctor shortage right now in this country. And then specialists too. With those type of programs, do folks have access to specialists, cardiologists, cancer, urologists and the like? So I'm deeply concerned about the cons of Medicare for all, but not necessarily the pros, but the cons. The pro, there's a lot of pros to it, but there's a lot of cons as well. So I'm not there yet, but I need to think on that a little bit. I need to consider that downstream.
Yeah, and just I would say, like we have those problems now. We have wait times now. We have a hard time getting a specialist now. You could wait a year to find a primary care physician now, just given the doctor shortage. And I guess that's a supply issue that can sort of be dealt with separately. And maybe we won't talk about that if we talk about education, sort of your push for STEM education specifically. But yes, how we pay for it. We're already paying for it. We're paying out the ass for it now. We pay twice as much in healthcare costs than a lot of our peer countries. It's just that a few healthcare executives are capturing all that value instead of it being spread out amongst us all. Right now we're paying $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a year in premiums, where we could pay $5,000 to $10,000 in taxes instead. And it's like, oh my God, you say the word taxes and people freak out. Yet your overall spending is going to be way lower in a Medicare for all type system.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind, whether you're talking about Optum, CVS, Walgreens, prescription drugs, healthcare companies, there's no doubt in my mind there's some price gouging and there's some what I would call antitrust investigative work that could be looked at. It does feel and seem like we're paying a lot more for services than we're getting quality outputs, right? We're paying a lot and our quality outputs are down here, right? We're not getting the biggest bang for our buck. So it seems to me that there's a lot of regulatory work that needs to be done to really look at the insurance companies as, relative to monopoly. Are they really monopolizing the system? And are they really, do they deserve to get paid what they're getting, right? And it comes to, hey, if I have this procedure, I'm getting paid for this. So you can't help but think there's some waste, fraud, and abuse going on. I have a friend of mine he was an investigator in the police department, and he said a lot of that stuff does happen. But that's waste, fraud, and abuse. That's a whole nother topic. But you got to think that on a broader scale, there's legal waste, fraud, and abuse that's occurring. That they're jacking up the premiums in one way.
Yeah. And so much of the waste and the fraud and abuse occurs in the in these massive private insurers and these drug companies and stuff. And it's like, that's the waste and the fraud and the abuse that we should be investigating. And it seems like currently we want to look at individuals and say you're responsible for fraud, where the fraud is largely systemic, and it's the people who have purchased our representatives that allow it to look the other way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess the biggest example is that, if I go get if I go to get a doctor visit, say the doctor visit's $100, but insurance will pay only $50, and then the out of pocket's $50. So it just seems to me that there's some operational cost efficiencies that need to be had there, especially if you're paying your full premium for your healthcare, right? That, like you said, that $20,000 a year. If you're spending that $20,000 a year, you shouldn't be paying out of pocket, right? So
yeah, the co-pays, co-insurance, all this stuff. It's intentionally confusing, I think, to keep people away from the system. You just pay and pay and pay, and don't actually use it because it's intimidating. And for a lot of folks, those co-pays and that co-insurance are prohibitive, and it makes you want to not go in there in the first place and even get that preventative care. And then we wind up paying more on the back end because of that. And it seems like the whole system is designed to just extract profit and not actually help anybody other than a handful of executives.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. I'm very confident if I was to pick up any healthcare executive, CEO, they're doing pretty well financially. And that's something we need to work. And it's not just with healthcare. The billionaire class in this country, at last time I checked, we have 938 billionaires. It's just like, wow, billionaires in this country. It's just unbelievable. The income inequality. And of course, that's another topic, but it gets to that. So yeah, I am definitely a proponent of looking at waste, fraud, and abuse. And I'm definitely a proponent of regulatory reforms to help make healthcare more cost effective and efficient as well.
How are we going to tackle that income inequality? And it's more so than the income inequality, right? Like, these executives, their income is, certainly it's high, but nominally it's not billions and billions and billions. That's all, in stock options and real estate and everything else. How do we sort of shake some of that wealth loose and circulate it back through the system so other folks at least get to touch it a little bit before they go hand it back over?
No, I think there's at least two that I can think of off the top of my head. So you have tax reform. That's a no-brainer, right? There needs to be the big, beautiful disaster of a bill was literally a disaster of a bill. Taking money from Medicaid and SNAP and giving it and letting the millionaire class not have to pay our taxes
it's like reverse Robin Hood. Yeah,
it's unchristian and un-American. I mean, come on, really? You're making $10 million a year. You need to keep more money in your pocket. Anyway, it's just utterly, it's ridiculous. I just feel like sometimes greed is ruining this country, and it has been for some time. The likes that folks will go to get that money. It's just unbelievable. Anyway, it's another topic. All right. So tax policy. It has to be at the forefront, right? The tax rates have got to go up. Income tax rates and corporate tax rates have got to go up, back up. Income tax rates, they always talk about effective tax rate, right? So, you hear about Elon and Jeff and company, they got an effective tax rate of 5 or 10%. Well, that's because they use their wealth to borrow against their assets and write off the interest on the borrowing to lower their tax burden. So they use the tax code, and it's legal. They use the tax code to lower their tax liabilities. So what we need to do is take the top tax rate, 35%, and it needs to go up to about 45 or 50% to compensate for that effective tax rate that they're using. That has to be adjusted. Now, I might get scorned for that, but that's a reality. And
I will scorn you that it's not even high enough.
Yeah, it might. I'm not an accountant. I'm an electrical engineer, but I know enough to know that 35% has got to go up to at least 55 or 60% to be able to compensate for that 25, 30% they're not paying, right? So it's got to go up. So tax policy has to be changed. Trade. Now, the tariffs, obviously, Trump wanted to push tariffs. Obviously, he did it the wrong way. He went through executive order instead of going through Congress like you're supposed to. He got his hands smacked on that deal. But we need to focus on resourcing of jobs, period. Now, right now, I mean, you got to pick the right time to do this stuff, but there's really no good time to do it, unfortunately. We have to start bringing manufacturing jobs back. And we really have to start prioritizing made in America once again. I mean, you go to Target or Walmart, everything's made in China. It's like we're giving money to these other countries. We need to because my grandfather once told me, he said, listen, if you work at a company, you need to buy from that company you work for, because from an economic standpoint, that stimulates your own business, and that money stays locally. The money stays locally in your town or in your community. That's how economics works. So when you build something in the U.S., you buy from that U.S. manufacturer, that money stays locally in the U.S. We're actually sending money overseas to China. They're taking a cut of every revenue stream, either through licensing or other supply contractual agreements to make that money. I mean, proof of this is look at their military. It's scary how many vessels they have with the Navy, how many destroyers they have. I think they have one aircraft carrier. It's scary. They've used all the money, all the economic power and trade that we've provided them to build their military up. Now they're the number
it's still
one.
only like the third of the size of ours.
But it's getting there to be. I mean, it's a force to be reckoned with now. Now they have 1.2 billion people. I think that's the latest number I have. I don't know. It's over a billion. So it's quite concerning that we have provided an economic stimulus to their economy to a point where we've been able to effectively subsidize building their military industrial complex up. It's kind of scary.
Let me ask about, bringing back the manufacturing jobs, with automation. How much are we bringing back? We can make more stuff here. How many people does that actually require anymore? So much of the manufacturing process is automated now. It's not like 10,000 dudes on an assembly line like it used to be in the 50s. And then you've got the AI component, also like in addition to the automation, making blue-collar workers unemployed. You've got AI coming in now, making white-collar workers unemployed. How are people going to live if all of these jobs are going away? Do we need to consider something like a universal basic income or something to that effect, just to, make sure that the folks at the bottom have enough to get by?
Yeah, so I'll hit it with what we know right now is what's safe, and what I would advocate for is three-dimensional jobs. Three-dimensional jobs are basically jobs that require a human. So usually all the skilled trade jobs, they're still in high demand. Electricians, pipe fitters, plumbers, millwrights, elevator operators, still in high demand. And the reason for that is most of the baby boomers are retiring. My parents' generation, I'm 54, so plus anybody over 60. A lot of those folks are getting out of the business and retiring. They're in serious demand across the board. and no robot's going to come in and do that job in the next few years. It's not going to happen. So skill trades, that's why I'm big on skill trades training. I actually did a brake job as a video. I don't know if you had an opportunity to take a look at it. It got a lot of likes. Everybody was like, whoa, our congressman's actually changing brakes. That's really cool. Actually, I did the brake job. So skill trades training, also medical jobs. They're dying. They're always looking for nursing, phlebotomist, any type of medical field, always looking for folks to do that work. And I would advocate for low interest or merit-based loan forgiveness for those type of roles because they're in such high demand and they pay well. Okay. So I really pushing for folks to go into this field. Those fields, the other fields that are impacted by AI, I mean, we need to start to look at universal basic income. I mean, down the road, because AI is already starting to impact certain jobs. I haven't seen the latest numbers yet, but it's coming. It's coming really fast. And unfortunately, I think we could slow it down, but we can't stop it. And here's why. Because Russia, China, other countries are going to be doing the same thing. So we cannot be left behind when it comes to our military industrial complex and competing in other countries. You know, we can't let them outcompete us from a defensive posture perspective, and you know, with weaponry, right? You know, we can't let that happen. So we have to kind of keep up with what they're doing. But from a basic universal income, I think we need to look at that. We need to look at the unemployment rate, right? Once the unemployment rate starts to go up and it's, you know, AI is taking over these jobs, we need to start looking at that and provide that if the data warrants that. When unemployment rates start going up and folks aren't getting opportunities, we need to really consider that and look at that. Absolutely.
Yeah, and you know, we say we want to push folks into these high wage fields and things that can't be replaced. Like obviously, you know, the plumbers and the pipe fitters and the millwrights and all that stuff that you can't. Roofers, like, you know, the AI is not going to get up there and climb on the roof. And lay shingles, right? Like. So yes, we need like those blue collar jobs and also those like what I like to call pink collar jobs, right? The care economy. Like my wife is a nurse. They never have enough people. So much of that is like you get these private companies and these nursing agencies and the hospitals and stuff. They don't want to pay to have enough staff. Maybe we can mandate certain minimums and say, hey, you need this many people, and then we have to pay them this much. It's going to be incumbent on, I think, the government to make sure that we have enough jobs, well-paying jobs for folks throughout, and just say, hey, these jobs all deserve a living wage. Otherwise, you know, you're gonna have large amounts of idle masses unemployed without work to do. That's how you get revolution. That's how you get guillotines there, Kyle.
I got a story. My grandfather was raised during the Great Depression, and let me tell you, he told me some stories. He was like 14 years old in the early 30s. And he came home one day, and his dad was crying in the backyard because he didn't know how he was going to feed the kids. It was scary times. Unemployment was like 22%. It was crazy times. That was one situation. Another buddy of mine, whose dad was a kid during the Depression. He used to stand in the food lines with his parents in Detroit, and they used to experience fighting and a lot of arguing and bickering and over food in Detroit. So yeah, it was very scary times. And I tell you, this AI could get to that again, and it's scary, and we got to get our arms around it really quickly. And I don't see enough of Congress doing anything about it, to be honest. I don't see any hearings happening. I don't see nothing. That's one of the things I would push as a congressional rep is let's start some hearings. Let's get the facts on the ground. What's really happening, and let the public know, and start to develop some legislation to deal with it.
It's like the tech oligarchs. They have purchased the services of both sides of the aisle to ignore these things, so they can capture all of the value that comes from automating away everything. And yes, then you have these large swaths of the unemployed, starving masses, because while they have their bunkers, and
and another thing, we don't have enough electrical engineers in Congress, and I am one, and I know what they're doing. I know what they're doing from a technology standpoint. So does like Thomas Massey. Of course, he's Republican, but at least he knows what they're talking about. Most of the folks in Congress don't have a tech background, so they don't, they could be, waving a magic wand in front of them, and they were like, huh? I don't know what you're talking about.
Lawyers, and actually law is one of those jobs where AI is becoming increasingly very good. AI can write a half decent legal brief.
Yeah, a lot of lawyers are going to be looking for opportunity. That's scary for the legal field, right? I mean, can you imagine just spending a couple $100,000 on a law degree? Now, all of a sudden, you're like, oh, well, I can't get a job now. I couldn't get a job before. Now I really can't get a job because you've been placed with AI writing legal briefs.
I went to school for computer science. It was 20 years ago. Never actually used my degree in computer science. I spent most of my life in blue-collar work, stuff that I wouldn't have needed a college degree for. Coders don't largely exist anymore. You can get with decent prompting AI to like write entire apps for you. It's impressive, but also scary. Yeah, we need folks doing things that the machines can't do, taking care of each other ideally, and we need government to mandate that those jobs taking care of each other deserve a living wage, and it's going to require vast amounts of regulation, and capital doesn't want to hear anything about regulation.
My position is we need AI regulation. Got to have it, not just from the worker labor issue, from just doing away with all the labor jobs and all the opportunities, but even data centers, right? We need value proposition for the communities. We need to understand, what's in it for the community, and transparency, right? What are we going to do for community, and who's doing what? What company's providing the funding for the projects? And we need oversight. We just need those things in Indiana.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we're building them with renewable energy, great. That's more renewable energy jobs. That's what we need. If we're building with closed loop systems, that sort of takes care of the water issue. And like you said, with the tax abatement. The value proposition that you mentioned, if these things come into the communities, they're good neighbors, they pay their taxes, some of the folks in the communities actually get some of that value returned to them instead of all of it going, off to Silicon Valley or the Cayman Islands or wherever, then maybe these things might be worth pursuing. But right now, again, it's like there's this Ukrainian phrase that the oligarchs, the people that own all the technology, they view us as the shit they grow their money in, and that's sort of how they're treating us with these data centers, is they're just taking a dump in our little our cities and our rural areas as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, bottom line is, from a state perspective and from a county perspective, some counties are stepping up with moratoriums. So you're starting to see some of that happening from the state perspective, because this is really, at the end of the day, a state issue, because states control the abatements, they control the building permits at the local level. I tell you, they can stop this stuff pretty quickly through local legislation and state and county government. You can stop it pretty quick if they want to.
I want to say Maine just instituted a AI data center moratorium.
Oh, they did? I didn't hear that. Okay. Yeah. So we just need to have hearings. We need to have transparency. We need to have value proposition. How much tax revenue are you going to provide the community? And then have the community vote on it and say, okay, yes or no. I mean, that's what we want, and that's what our communities deserve here in Southern, in the CD9. So.
Yeah. You know what, Kyle? I'm so glad we had a chance to talk about all this stuff tonight. We're just keeping we've barely scratched the surface. There's issues on issues and issues on issues that affect all of us, that our government has to deal with, that you would have to deal with in Congress. But we've largely stuck to the economic issues, the affordability, the kitchen tables stuff, as they call it tonight. I would love, should you come out of this thing next Tuesday, to have you back before the general election. We could maybe scratch a lot more surfaces and get into some of those other issues that you would have to deal with. But for now, why don't you tell the folks where they can find you, find out more information about your campaign? You still need volunteers these last couple days here?
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. I could use, I have a few folks that are helping me out, very gracious and kind folks that are helping me with sign deployments. I always could use campaign donations the last minute. That always helps. I mean, I know we only have 4 days or so left, but little extra money at the very end can't hurt. And I appreciate everybody's support in this campaign. And please go to my website, https://KeilRoark.com, and follow me. I just released a campaign video. I just got one done. It'll be out there, and then my wife and I are probably going to do one tonight or tomorrow night, and have a little family video on there as well. And so, yeah, and I participated on all the debates, so I'm out there. So it's one thing great about this system we live in. I mean, if you think back 30, 40 years ago, we had nothing like this. So when you try to vote for somebody, you're going to have to meet them in person. But at least now you have Facebook, you have videos, you have debates, you have TV. There's a lot of different forums to make an informed decision about a candidate. So that's what's good about our current system.
And we certainly try to help out with that around here. Keil, stick around backstage. I'm going to say goodbye to the folks. I will come back and say goodbye to you on the other side. But for now, sir, thank you, Keil Roark, for joining me here tonight on the Who's Left podcast.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
All right, that was Keil Roark, candidate for Indiana's 9th Congressional District down here in southern Indiana. And thanks again to him, and thanks to you for watching. As I am every Sunday, I will be back live at 10:30 a.m. for Who's Left This Week, Indiana's only unapologetically progressive Sunday morning politics show. We'll talk about the week's top stories from U.S. and international news to what's going on right here in our neck of the woods and how it is all interconnected. Tune in on YouTube, Facebook Live, and of course at progressiveindiana.net. My guests this week are songwriter, performer, filmmaker, and artist Fred Miller, as well as State House District 81 candidate Sharon White. Then, as I said at the top of the show, I'll be back Sunday night with another 9th District Democratic congressional candidate, Dr. Tim Peck, who joins me for the final PIN virtual town hall of the primary season. And next Tuesday, join me, Derek Holder, Brianna Newhart, Kelly DeLong, and Carly Dunn for our election night coverage. We'll break down the primary results as they come in, looking at both Democratic and Republican contests. We're going live at 7 p.m. and staying with you all night long. And we can't deliver all of this vital content to you without your support. So please consider contributing to Who's Left and the wider Progressive Indiana Network with a paid subscription if you're able. This independent media project relies solely on the generosity of kind patrons like you to make this information available for free to everybody. Again, that's at progressiveindiana.net. We could also really use a follow on social media at Progressive Indiana Network on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel at the same handle, and over on Blue Sky and TikTok, the handle is PIN Indiana. You can find me on most social media sites at Who's Left. Send me a DM anywhere with feedback, tips, ideas, and concerns, or email me directly at scott@whosleft.us. Finally, please forward the show to a friend and have them pass it on too. Let's keep building this project and a truly democratic state, one conversation at a time. Until the next one, this has been the Who's Left podcast. I'm Scott Aaron Rogers. Love each other, Indiana.